So I admire investors who have long-term vision and patience to basically play the game, both fast and slow, if you will. I think a lot of investors, unfortunately, don't really understand what causes value. And it really has to do with setting a clear vision, building a cohesive team to go chase that vision, making ruthless changes when needed, right? To basically ensure that that team is cohesive and has the right people at all times, communicating the hell out of that vision, and then basically getting after it. Is this like in the war, in the trenches is really how it's fought. And, look, like it's hard to sit above the fray and pattern match in a world where the game's playing at like 8x speed right now. Right. So I think there's a level of empathy and having points of view about where and how these things are going to unfold as an investor, but operator being on the ground level, like being in the war at like 8 feet off of the ground is super valuable.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Chris O'Neill, a powerhouse executive with more than 25 years of leadership experience across tech's most iconic brands, such as Google, Glean, and Xero. He's currently the CEO of GrowthLoop, sits on the board of GAF, pretty cool, and has invested in or advised a string of next-gen tech companies from Neva to Coho. He brings a unique blend of wartime turnaround grit. We can talk about that. That's pretty cool. Peacetime scale-up vision with deep experience in AI, cloud, MarTech, and go-to-market strategy. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, great to be here, Brian. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Well, you've led some of the most pivotal tech companies over the last couple decades. What's the through line that connects your time at Google, Glean, and now GrowthLoop?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to be a part of some incredible companies and brands at different times. Google, obviously, a very important company, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime company, and a fantastic run. These different technology shifts create such outsized value, and it's such an honor to be and a privilege to be operating in and around when they happen. You don't know exactly when they're going to happen, but when they do, boy, you have to move quickly. Typically, it's all about team, right? Having a team that really understands and seizes the moment, and then really has the agility to move fast and be relentless in terms of separating the signal from the noise and then delivering real value. I mean, that's as simply as I can put it. Ultimately, leadership is about delivering results and aligned results. These technology shifts allow just outsized opportunities to do just that.
So maybe you can unpack that concept of a wartime versus peacetime leadership. You've been in both, and how do you decide which one a company needs?
I don't think there's much distinction, honestly. I think it's illusion. It's wartime all the time if you're a great leader. I think people who think that they're in peacetime are kind of deluding themselves unless they have a massive lead or a huge capture of the market like Google had. I just don't think that exists, right? I think that the best leaders, love the phrase wartime, but basically you're constantly pushing your teams to deliver value faster and more aggressively than anyone else. Like once you figure out product market fit, which is a huge thing, like until you have that, nothing else matters. Once you have it, you got to run. You got to go take the market. You got to put in place the right system, and then you got to just be relentless about the team and making sure that you always have the right people in the right places. So I just don't subscribe to this wartime or peacetime thing. It's kind of always war, and it's always hard. And the pace of the underlying innovation with artificial intelligence now, I've never seen anything like it in my career. So if you're not actually aggressively leaning into the latest models, the latest protocols, and figuring out what it means, you're already behind. So I think that the metaphor is outdated, and you need to be paranoid at all times.
And yeah, you mentioned Google, and a lot of people have mentioned, maybe Google was kind of resting on their laurels a bit. Maybe they were in kind of peacetime, sitting on these large language models, not deploying them. And along
They were,
yeah,
100% they were. And the people that were really talented were getting very frustrated. This is not too dissimilar from Microsoft towards the end of Steve Ballmer's era. The best talent there were getting really antsy. A lot of them left. Satya has done at Microsoft is remarkable because he's reinvigorated the culture. He's made some really intelligent bets. It's nice to see Google wake up recently too, right? They were asleep when OpenAI came and woke them up. That's how this works, right? Great companies respond to that, and Google is responding well. They have always had, I think, in at least last decade or two, a massive technology lead, and it's a matter of that's necessary but not sufficient to actually take the market when it shifts as quickly and dynamically and as rapidly as actually we're seeing right now. So Google is starting to wake up, and it's nice to see. Competition has this remarkable effect, right? Where you can't sit around for too long, even if you're a Google, even if you're a Microsoft. you're always going to be undercut or by a much more aggressive either startup or just a different company combining forces in different and unique ways.
Yeah, and I think the way Jeff Bezos phrased this at Amazon, which was one of my most fun work experiences when I led AI at the marketplace team there, was it's always day one, right? It's always day one, and so we always have to think like it's day one
I
and
agree. I
attack the
mean,
market.
yeah, I agree, Brian. I mean, Bezos has some fantastic quotes, and the whole mindset with day one. I actually read his. Well, he attaches it to the shareholders newsletter every year. But I'd encourage people to go back and read his day one, like his letter to the shareholders that he wrote when they went public. It is inspiring, and is relevant today as it was when the day he wrote it. And it's really about staying paranoid, staying really connected, and really like the thing that and maybe a through line as well is like the job of a company is to basically deliver value, right? Create value on behalf of its customers. And the best proxy for that is literally the discounted cash flows of the future, like earnings of a company. And if you really think about that in the context of a company, it's like lifetime value, right? If you're not adding to and generating ideas that bend the curve and extend lifetime value by keeping customers in the fold longer and doing more and more things that create value for them, then you're not doing your job. And he's so clear that the intrinsic value of a company is essentially discounted of all the different cash flows. I mean, that's benefit of him starting his career as a hedge fund manager. But it really is a simple formula for actually how you grow and drive value over time. And the way you do that is well summarized in his day one mindset, which you've done a good job over time of actually staying true to.
You mentioned product market fit. Once you have it, you need to really press on the accelerator and go capture the market. How do you know, both internally as a founder and externally as an investor, that there's product market fit at a particular startup?
Yeah, I mean, the easy and not helpful way is that you feel it. You start to feel pull in the market. And I'm like, okay, that's cool and neat. And
Yeah, that's like, okay, yeah, it's raining outside. Yeah.
not much I can do about it. I'll tell you how I had the good fortune to help. Before Glean was called Glean, it was called CEO, and we had some design partners and some really early customers, and we started to see some unusual usage patterns, which were fantastic. I'm a big fan. I think it's Sean Ellis's product market fit thing. So we started asking the people on early design partner teams to say, hey, basically, how would you feel if we took this away from you? Right. And it started to emerge really clearly. They'd be like, we'd be really pissed if you took this away from us. And I think the heuristic is if like 40% plus have either would really be upset or like strongly agree or agree, that's a good proxy for product market fit. In Glean's case, it was close to 2/3. And I was like, yeah, the visceral, like, oh yeah, people really, after a proof of concept even, would feel upset if you took it away. And then we did this quasi-quantitative survey that said, how would you feel if we took it away? That's a fairly tactical and I found very useful way to gauge it. There are many, many other ways in which people proxy it, but those have been the two kind of things that I
wonder if
found.
those two numbers, if that number actually correlates with churn, right? Like if you look at that number and churn, I would imagine if people aren't getting value from it, they're just going to churn. But it's hard to kind of gauge that with these annual contracts, you know?
It's true. Actually, if I layer on more specifically, and the team's been very public about these numbers over time, so I can say it, because churn to me is a function of usage, right? So that's a visceral feeling that says, hey, like I'd be upset if you took it away, which is very powerful, even though like hard to quantify or trace it back into the usage of the product. If you combine it with the actual usage of the product, and in B2C, it's usually a DAU over MAU, like daily active users over monthly or weekly even. What we were seeing early on at Glean was a DAU MAU ratio that was like hovering on 50% on weekdays anyways, and then even higher in some of the more engaged uses.
Yeah, so for the audience, that means that 50% of the monthly users were actually logging in daily, which is pretty high for a product like that.
Insanely high, right? That's consumerized usage for an enterprise product, right? So we knew we were onto something, and then we started to see some usage start to weave its way through. So yeah, there's a variety of ways you can look clinically, but ultimately you do put it together and have judgment to say like, hey, it's time to go. So how do you actually step on the gas, take the market, build a distribution system that matters? That can take lots of different shapes and forms, whether you're doing it direct, whether you're doing it with the product-led growth motion, or whether you're doing it with and alongside partners. It really depends on the situation, but ultimately you got to get really thoughtful about that system, just as you are on the development side with product and engineering. You create systems right, that reinforce one another, the different components of the product, you have to think of the same way on the go-to-market side.
So let's talk about, speaking of Glean and AI and future of the work stuff, you're early advisor there, now leading GrowthLoop, which leverages agentic AI. What's your take on where enterprise AI is headed generally?
I'm obviously very bullish, right? And part of the reason I'm back in a day-to-day operating role was I just believe this is like, as much as it's hyped, it's actually going to be underhyped in the long term. Like it's one of these things. It's like we overestimate things in the short term and underestimate them in the long term. That's
Right,
100% the case here. Like it is so like eating the world, whatever terms you want to use.
AI, yeah, I like to say AI is eating software, and it's
Yeah,
eating eating workflows now too. Just
correct.
little jobs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm specifically focused on marketing workflows right now, and it's very obvious to me that the high water marks for the systems of record in the marketing area have been achieved. Like in other words, their best days are behind them. And the combination of the rise of data clouds and the application of agentic AI on top of very specific workflows, you throw in protocols that allow different agent swarms to take over some of these workflows. I mean, we're in the early innings of it. It's super exciting. It's very clear there's a number of like these killer applications. Glean's one of them, right? In terms of knowledge sharing and understanding and surfacing inside of a company. I don't want to say they've won, but they very, very clearly are one of the use cases that's like a killer application layer use case. You're seeing in some of the legal worth use cases with Harvey and others like that. We aspire to be one in marketing. We're really lucky. We've an early lead. We're a bootstrapped company that really found product market fit early. And are looking to accelerate that based upon a couple of different jobs that are being done for marketers, and we can unpack it if you're interested. But it's like, to me, it's the combination of the rise of data clouds, the beginning of the fall of systems of record, and then the application of agentic AI, again, both specifically to workflows, and then the big breakthrough recently of these protocols, MCP and agent-to-agent protocols, which are allowing, much like TCP/IP did with the internet, to basically have standardization of exchange of information and context to allow these workflows to not only be better and automated as discrete steps, but more importantly, as they're stitched together in automatic ways so that humans can be still in the loop. I'm a big believer that humans need to stay in the loop, but these workflows, these agent swarms can happen in ways that we could never even imagined even a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. As somebody who built a lot of marketing automation tools in my day. I was a Marketo certified expert running demand gen and lifecycle teams, 15 years ago. And, that snowballed into a product career building MarTech, ad tech, sales tech. It's just, it feels like marketing and ad tech is always on the tip of the spear and implementing new technology.
Yeah, I think there's a lot at stake, right? So there's a lot of money being spent there for a reason, because the incremental difference is vast. The way I'm keeping track at home is the early use cases. I mentioned a couple of the killer applications, but the generalized use cases, obviously, it's very good for coding. AI is very good for coding. We're starting to see that, not in a kind of like gee whiz bang way, but like actually doing a lot of the work, which is fantastic. The other one is customer support and some of the reactive things where you have agents either replacing and or severely augmenting customer support. That's very clear. And I think marketing is emerging as one of the next right now. I actually saw that in Benedict Evans' recent report. I was like his stuff. He basically
I love it.
Yeah, he's very smart.
Really good reports. Yeah. He's doing them independently. He was doing them at A16Z, and now he's, I think, doing them independently. Correct. Is that right?
Yeah, I think for the last several years. He's always a really thoughtful commentator and analyst on the market, and he's laid this out in that direction, right? And Mary Meeker's recent report, I'm so glad to see her back doing her magic. It's clear to me that marketing is going to be one of the near-term and certainly medium and long-term beneficiary of applying agentic AI on top of workloads and workflows. So again, we're just in the early innings. I'm happy again to explain how we think about it, but it's just super exciting. And it's also kind of crazy, the pace, as I mentioned. Never seen anything like this before. Again, I've had good fortune to be in lots of different things. Around when the mobile phone came out, came into the era, like the internet. Like I've been around long enough to see these, and there's a pretty profound difference in terms of this one. All those previous technology shifts really changed in the relationship between how a consumer interacted with information, or specifically media or marketing. This one's is that and a massive supply side shock. In other words, it changes the workflows. We're talking about this, right? So it changes the way in which work is done. And in many ways, it's a supply side phenomena and a demand side, whereas the others were mostly demand side with a little bit of sprinkle of supply side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, by supply side, you mean the supply of labor now is being
Correct. The
unlocked.
workflows
Yeah,
itself, like so, how
yeah,
marketing gets created, or how whatever workflow you care to think about,
yeah.
it's
What's
fundamentally
fascinating if you think
changing.
about AI and the way it's being implemented is in the past, these were all just, SaaS tools that help people get their jobs done, right?
Correct.
Wrappers on a database is kind of like the term that people use to sort of downplay SaaS and its impact. But now AI is actually being implemented in a way that actually it does the work, right? And so now you just get leverage in the
Yeah.
operating stack of
Yeah.
organizations. And you guys mentioned your bootstrap. So you guys haven't taken any money, and maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I don't want to downplay the SaaS stuff. Like it was a huge shift in and of itself, right? But it was really taking the software market, expanding it slightly. But the real action was on-prem to cloud, right? So that was, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars at play. With AI, you're introducing the work of the work, the labor market services. In that way, it's both a lever both on the software itself, in ways we've talked about already, and then it expands in terms of the work. It does so autonomously. So yeah, it expands the market in a massive way, like multiplicative way. So it's not just about carving up an existing market; it's entering into new ones. And I do believe it's additive, right? In that it's not just replacing things; it's actually allowing companies to do more and different things that they couldn't previously do, right? In other words, it was too cost prohibitive, or just like down the list of things they didn't want to do. So we're in the beginning of like seeing that shift unfold as well. In terms of GrowthLoop being a bootstrap company, yeah, I had the good fortune of knowing Chris and David when I was on my 10-year run at Google. And one of the things of working at these talent magnet companies is you get the chance to meet so many and work alongside so incredible people. Chris and David are two of those people. Hungry, scrappy, smart, entrepreneurial. David's like, yeah, I need to figure out how to learn how to code, teaches himself how to code. And then he's like, yeah, I'm not good enough yet. Goes and gets a master's of computer science at Stanford as an example of just his, the combination of his amazing talent and resources and capabilities. But yeah, it was like, look, he looked at how Google was doing marketing and they thought there was a better way, right? At the extremes, you had black box ML stuff, just feed it in there and it will sort of work. And the other extreme was throw a bunch of people at it, and analysts and AI will just do SQL queries back and forth to figure out who to actually target. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you have jobs to be done. You have to like market and sell stuff, and that took months. So either way, it was just suboptimal. So starting with Google as the first and still our largest customer, right? We basically said there's a better way to do this, which is the application of, again, belief and bet on data clouds, in this case, BigQuery, to say, look, we're not going to create yet another data silo. We're going to leave the data where it is. We're going to build specific workflows and intelligence on top. Early prediction of churn. How do you reduce churn? Right. That was like basically a propensity model to basically apply on top of BigQuery data, and you have better answer. That's like automated, right? And you can actually act upon it. Then you go basically do stuff downstream. Is that email or in an app, what have you? From that humble beginnings, that's what GrowthLoop has been built. Bootstrap from Google to, ironically, dozens of professional sports teams. We're now pushing up into very large enterprise workloads and companies, the likes of Costco and Albertsons, Allegro, which is the Amazon of Eastern Europe, and many, many others, right? So we're very fortunate, but it was really about solving a very specific use case, a very specific pain point, and making a smart and or lucky bet to say, hey, these data clouds are going to be where all the information and data should be, as opposed to putting it yet another CRM or another customer data platform, and then having to do all the heavy work of moving and copying and moving the data all around. That becomes both expensive, not secure, and in the world of AI, it becomes suboptimal to apply AI in fragmented ways. You want to have it in fewer places. Hence the rise of Snowflake and Databricks and Google and Amazon, et cetera.
Right. So the insight there is like, hey, you have all this customer data and marketing data sitting there, and now you can layer on this intelligence to solve these business problems, such as churn.
Correct. So if I look historically, right, and these things are easy to criticize in looking backwards, but at the time they served a purpose. Like to say, oh, customer data is important because customers are important. Okay, but then stitching it together with transactions or lifetime value prediction models was very difficult because those systems all live differently. If you believe in the cloud, like big data clouds, you put your customer information alongside your marketing performance information, alongside your loyalty information, as much information as you can, and that allows you to do things in a closed loop fashion. That has evaded the Salesforces of the world, evaded the Adobes of the world in the past, because they bought through acquisition. They built their company mostly through acquisitions, and they basically tried to stitch all these incompatible systems together, and then you had to stitch together all these disparate data sources together. And it's really difficult to do that. You can do it. It's very time consuming, costly. And in today's world, you can basically put information in the cloud, and then you can form causal relationships. You can establish causal relationships in terms of you do these sorts of things, and it had this effect on your primary business objective that you're looking to. Remember back to the Amazon thing, right? Amazon is all about lifetime value, essentially, discounted cash flows. The intrinsic value of Amazon is the function of all these things they do to improve the lifetime value with their customers. For the first time, or in recent history, you can do all that now. You can say, I'm trying to reduce or increase lifetime value. Here's a series of things we're going to, AI agents can suggest to you. You go out and do them, and you write that back into the cloud, and you have, again, a stitched up point of view to say, hey, did we actually move lifetime value in this case? And can we prove it? That's been the holy grail that we've been chasing in this industry for decades. We're now starting to be able to deliver against it. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So what parts of this marketing stack are most ripe for intelligent automation that you're describing in the next, 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, the way first off, you have to believe, and I think the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? You have to believe in the power of these data clouds. That is where the information is going to be. It is. Therefore, any of the workflows need to begin and run through and then end back up into the data clouds. I'm very long, and full disclosure, I'm a shareholder of Snowflake and have been for a while. The Google BigQuery, Redshift, all these clouds continue to be more relevant and add more functionality. That's where, thing number one. From there, the way we think about it, we're called GrowthLoop for a reason, because it starts with, hey, who are you going to speak to? Who are you going to target? That's number one. And then there's orchestration of experiences. It's not segment and then blast everything to everyone or the same thing within a segment. You're actually trying to think about orchestration of experiences across an interaction of a life cycle with a customer, over the time. And the last and very important part is how you personalize all this in a very real way, right? Down to one-to-one. That says, hey, it understands me, it understands my context, both in the macro sense, but even in the micro and in the moment sense. So if you think about that, you're going to basically be able to have compiled view, a holistic view of your customers and even your prospects. You're going to be able to get recommendations about who to target, how to orchestrate a workflow or a journey or whatever you want to call it. And these terms will evolve over time. And then lastly, how do you personalize it at every step so it feels special, right? We know when we have those interactions with brands. Look, I grew up in a small town, and the best part of that was everyone sort of knew each other. So any experience had that context. And the same is now true in the technology world. The opportunity is to personalize and delight people. And again, this will be accomplished with agents at every step of the way in the form of a swarm that basically understands how to connect it and stitch it up in an automated fashion. So that's my best picture of the future that we're building towards, and we're doing it iteratively with and alongside some incredible partners like the Googles and Snowflakes and Databricks of the world. And then we're really lucky to have some customers who are forward thinking to kind of really think about how to create that future, again, kind of one sprint at a time.
This episode of the Ignite podcast is brought to you by our friends at Build, spelled BYLDD. Build is a development agency that specializes in helping early stage startups, especially non-technical founders and teams, build and launch scalable revenue-generating software products. Most startups don't have $100K to hand over to a big agency, and honestly, for your first product, you probably shouldn't. Sure, you could try rolling the dice on some freelancers, but that's a gamble with unclear costs and a lot of project management headaches and no guarantees. That's where Build comes in. For just $10K in about a month, Build can turn your validated idea into a real product that's ready to go to market. It's a smart, efficient way to build a foundation for a company of any size. And yes, companies that start with Build can and have scaled very large. Their clients have gone on to be backed by YC, Y Combinator, and Google, and raise funding at multi-million-dollar valuations. Ready to get started? Head over to build.com. Again, that's BYLDD, to connect to Ayush and the team and let him know you heard about Build on the Ignite podcast. Interesting, the edifice of technological civilization. We build up this huge multi-layered cake of technology, and we keep using technology trying to get back to a small town feeling. But we've created this, huge global civilization of, technology and, bits and bytes flowing around the internet, and agents talking to agents talking to humans, and we're all just trying to get back to hey, Bob, like across the fence,
This is true. I never quite thought of it that way. But, we're just so far from it, right? The technology has been there, but it's just gotten too hard to do and too manual. I'm a big believer and optimistic that these agents will work alongside. Like, think of like having thousands of interns or thousands of like people on your team. Even if you're an individual contributor, like that's the world I see in the very near term, if not present. They will be like massively valuable teammates that kind of work alongside you in order to accomplish something very specific. So I'm not one of these like, oh, they're going to take over the world and like everyone's going to lose their job. Like that's like, I think so reductionist and so simplistic. Like I actually think it's much more nuanced, and we're going to reduce the amount of like, I don't know if you remember the movie Office Space, but like TPS reports like will go away, right? There's no need ever to ask someone for a status update when an agent can go out and do a better job synthesizing what the heck is happening with X in the company. But moreover, it's like, what are the equivalent of those soul-sucking things that exist in companies? They will go away. At least companies that will survive, they will find ways to extinguish the soul-sucking things that really cause humans to not like work. I'm a believer that this will be an elevated experience. It'll be an enlightened experience if we do it well. And we can
Yeah, everybody
do
has
way
taste now.
more.
I mean, what humans actually bring to the work equation is their imagination, creativity, and just taste. And so
Yeah, I
everybody
think
now
that's
has
right.
this army of workers. Everybody's an
Yeah,
exec now.
yeah, I think
And
that's right.
everybody has these agent interns and agent, associates working for them on all over the stack in every function.
Yeah. Yeah. But just think about how much of that gets crowded out today, right? Like you're just exhausted by the time you do most things at work. And it's like, oh, yeah, like how much creativity can I bring? How much, the word strategy is so overused, but like if you think about what you're trying to accomplish and how it connects to a delightful experience for a customer and the metrics you care about in a company that responds to basically feedback you get, it's really hard to integrate those things. Right. And humans are unique at doing that. Yet so much of the energy at work gets just sucked up by garbage, like soul sucking. I do these 15 things and then I need to stitch it together with these other, like it's just, that's the lived reality of most workers today. And I just think we can do better.
Yeah. What do you think about the phrase marketing ruins everything? And what I mean by that is, I'm seeing as an investor, I see probably a new startup every day, pitching me on, oh yeah, we're going to use agents to automate, cold outbound or SDRs or,
Yeah.
and so you're probably feeling it too. Like I get lots of cold inbound and it's getting better and better because it's all AI generated and customized for me. But on the other side of that, maybe I need an agent to answer all these agents, right?
Well, that vision isn't very far from mine for we're actually starting to see, and I'll come back to that in a second. But like, I just, whenever you hear overly cute expressions, like I've just been trained, maybe perhaps it's my upbringing in a small town, to be skeptical of bullshit, or having been in and out of the valley over the course of my career to really know what's great about the valley, then where overly reductive statements like that can be dangerous. I'll give you examples. Like I call it the field of dreams, right? It's like, oh, build it and they will come. So like this tantalizing, like the smooth sounding like things like you just build a great product and then it'll take, it's just garbage. You need to actually do both. You need to really build amazing experiences in the form of products, and then you'd be able to tell people about it
Got
and
to sell
do,
people
well, you
fundamentally.
gotta explain to them why it fits into their world and their life and how it's going to make their life better, and not in a hand wavy bullshit way. Oftentimes that's in the form of storytelling, which people sometimes are skeptical of. But like I think that that's just true, and that's true. Like I think your comment about marketing, just like no, it's bad marketing needs to go away. Untargeted everything, like the stuff that's not relevant to people, will go away, right? And you can smell it a mile away with all these AI like powered everything. Like, oh my gosh, my inboxes have all blown up. So you're right. Like I actually do think part of this is having agents for us. How does that work? Okay, in a retail setting, I'm on the board of Gap, and like there is like a pair of blue jeans on on the Gap side, lots of different cuts, lots of different things. Now, in the old days, where equivalent to like Yahoo directory compared to Google, right? In the old days, Yahoo directory was like canonical, like categorization of everything. And then along comes Google with backlinks, among other innovations that basically fundamentally disrupted the ability to find information. That will look quaint relative to what is happening today. Come back to my blue jeans example, right? the amount of attributes for those blue jeans will explode into the forms of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions. Those jeans aren't just a pair of like fabric that are colored a certain way and cut a certain way. They're worn by a certain influencer. Maybe like not me literally going to Coachella, but someone's going to Coachella. Think of all the different jobs that like product does and the amount of attributes that we now understand about that thing. And it will be personalized to humans, right? Different people looking at that same thing for a different purpose. How do we accomplish that? I believe everyone will have their own agent that will basically follow them in interesting ways to say, this is my lived context, this is what I'm looking for, in ways I can't even articulate. Think of it more like Netflix or Spotify, where it's basically making recommendations that feel eerily powerful, yet when it's done really well, it's highly personalized to my context in a way that makes me delighted. We're only just starting to get there, to be clear.
Right.
It took a
Like
long
my
time.
YouTube feed's a great example of that. They just recommend really good videos for me to consume.
Yeah. But think about that in all aspects of your life, not just in the entertainment realm of your videos, right? It's going to be true of products and experiences. And I just think that's good. I think that's going to reduce a lot of the waste, a lot of the bullshit, and a lot of the like just like making me feel like I'm being hit over the head with things that are not relevant. Like this happens a lot today. And this is one of the things we help companies. It's like you just buy, I don't know, I'm looking for to add to my patio in my backyard, right? So I bought a nice umbrella. And like, why am I still getting the stupid ads for umbrella? Like, it's like we allow people to suppress that instantly the second that I understand that is known, right? Literally minutes after the transaction's been purchased. Like, is that kind of suppression of the noise and to say, hey, look, like, what else do you know about me and how can you be a partner in that? So it's a mind shift fundamentally. There'll be agents working on both sides of the equation. And then I think where magic happens is when they actually kind of meet in the middle and like deliver ways that like I think will be mind expanding for those who lean into it. And those, frankly, who don't, companies and brands will be left in the dust. Like they will like literally be like, oh my gosh, like personalization is going to be the biggest moat in this world of agentic AI and agentic marketing. What I mean by that is like, it's going to look really odd if you rock up to a brand and they're still talking about you as if you're just looking for a pair of blue jeans and you don't know your size and don't know anything about you, right? It'll just look really, it just look bad. And those companies will unfortunately die. They deserve to.
Close the loop on GrowthLoop, to use a pun. Yeah. What's your vision for GrowthLoop over the next, say, five to 10 years?
Yeah, I talked about this personalization down to one-to-one, and those terms have been thrown around with hand-wavy terms for a long time. We talk about compound marketing, right? So as a youngster, I was obsessed with investing. My parents, I grew up in the sticks, right? So there was this one, and we got a lot of snow. It's a stereotypical Canadian.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in this town called Goderich, Ontario, on the shores of the Lake Huron.
Okay,
right,
yeah.
In small town Ontario.
So cold in the winter, like ice
very
cold.
And really snowy. I bring that up because we had like usually a dozen or so snow days, and like these were real snow days where like you were like snowed in. One time, family friends were visiting, and they were stuck at our house for 5 days. And this one woman, Gail was her name, gave me this book called The Wealthy Barber. It's just like this kind of story about this wealthy barber named Sam who lived a simple life but accumulated a lot of wealth. And if you really peel it all back, he was just basically adhering to certain principles. And the one most powerful of them is compound interest. Just invest a little bit over time consistently, and it really works well. I give you that as a backdrop because I think the same is true for what we're building. We're calling it compound marketing, right? And it's the notion that these little things that you do will improve a little bit, but the most important thing is the iteration speed, right? So if you're compounding over the course of a month or a quarter or a year, that's fine. Like most people are thinking that way today. But what if you're compounding over the course of a week or even a day, right? If you start to get 1-2% improvements in a week or a day, and you do it consistently over time, the difference between the companies that do that versus the companies that are going to look back at the TPS reports at the end of the quarter, it's like 10x X times improvement, right? Little tiny things. It's not silver bullets. It's not going to be some like game-changing thing that happens and emerges overnight. Maybe there'll be those things, and that's great. But the real game is how do we help people get a little bit better every day, and then do more of that and iterate much, much faster. So that is the broader vision. We're calling it compound marketing. And it's all about iteration speed and allowing you to basically build on top of data clouds where all the data belongs, and then apply agentic AI at every one of the steps. And I do believe we'll blow up the terminology even, right? Right now we talk about audiences and journeys and all this stuff. It'll be much like what we were just describing. It'll be one-to-one agents that are basically working on behalf of a customer or prospect to basically ensure that the things that they bring into their life make sense for them. So that's the future we're building. We're very fortunate to have done so from a bootstrap way. So we now have a capital partner that's allowing us to accelerate. So we're putting money to work. But it's been from a position of really solving real customer problems from the beginning. And we're really small and scrappy, and we're living the mantra of like how to be an AI first company that can be like 100 people doing doing really
100 million in revenue or more. Yeah.
Well, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not out of the realm of fantasy, right? Like we're tackling a massive market, and we're really lucky to have some incredible brands that are really pushing us and their own teams to do better against the vision we're describing.
I've seen this as an investor too over the last 5 years, especially, founders just getting much more bootstrapped, getting a lot more traction, getting to a quarter, $500,000 of ARR before they raise any money. Literally just 2 or 3 founders just bootstrapping all the way to hundreds of thousands of revenue, if not $1 million.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been in all sorts of situations as you described at the top. Like I've been like giants like Google. I did turnaround Evernote. Glean was hyper efficient in the early days and still is. I mean, it is an opportunity of a lifetime to be doing these sorts of things. I'm not quite of the belief that it's going to be 1 or 2 people, but if you're going to achieve certain scale in enterprise, you do need to add some scale. But relative to old business models, it's night and day, right? There's such efficiency. So as an investor, picking those founders and then figuring out how they can apply technology to get these forces multipliers working in their favor is everything, I think. I do believe these companies will be fun to work at, as I described earlier. Like no TPS reports, right? No nonsense, right? You can actually truly work on the things that are going to make a difference, and you'll have the tools and the ability and the feedback mechanisms to know what is what, so you can separate the signal from the noise. It's fun. It's just why I'm back on the field. Like to me, it's all about people solving really interesting problems and a mission that truly matters. It's surprising to me that I'm going back to work on the holy grail problem we were tackling at Google, 10, 15 years ago for me. That this is indeed possible with all these agents and new technology. And it's just fun. We're just having a lot of fun.
I'd love to talk about your board work and governance. You've been on some public and private boards, Gap, Tim Hortons, and more. What if founders and CEOs often misunderstand about effective board dynamics?
At the simplest level, again, I was super fortunate. I mean, I got a call when I was like, I don't know. I don't think I was 40 at the time to join the board of Tim Hortons up in Canada. If you're Canadian, you know what that is, or if you've been in and around the borders, it's like the Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts of Canada. Incredible company, incredible brand, and they needed some help with technology, so I was brought on. And that was a very short-lived board because Warren Buffett and Burger King and 3G bought the company. So I learned a lot about how you need to be playing offense at all times, even when you have a very successful business. You need to be basically thinking about growth, thinking about international, and thinking about having the best team you can possibly ever have. That was one of the many lessons, some of the many lessons that I learned there. But at the simplest level, governance can be simply boiled down, especially in publicly traded companies, to be like necessary evil or brain trust. Necessary evil, there's no shortage of compliance requirements, from all the SOX requirements. There's just not, you could spend all your time checking the boxes and doing all sorts of compliance related stuff. And of course, there's some of that that's needed, right? And good and healthy, right? Good compliance and good like defense and risk mitigation is an important part of any company. So that's that part of it. But the other was brain trust. How do you think about the collection of people that are around that metaphorical table to basically take advantage of their unique experiences and skills against a strategy and a story and a game you're trying to win? Right. And then uniquely forge a relationship individually and collectively to say, hey, how can we harness the collective superpowers of these people in order to go faster, further, and help out and or minimize risk along the way? It's really that it's subtly different, but massively, it feels so different if you're in a board where you feel like part of a brain trust versus, okay, we're just here, metaphorically doing TPS reports and compliance checking boxes. So that's like, obviously you can tell what I think. Like, I don't want to be part of a board. And I think like it's kind of most boards that are just playing necessary evil are not that helpful. Right. But it is up to the leader to think differently, to lean in, because look, ultimately as a board member, you can only do so much. You're not operating the company. So you need to basically insist upon you have the right leader, right? CEO, hire and fire the CEO, and that they have a compelling multi-year plan that ladders up to value creation. And then ultimately the formation or the conditions of a great culture. Beyond that, like it's all up to the leader and the leadership team. So that's kind of my point of view on governance at the simplest level. And can talk a little bit more if you're interested.
Let's talk about some global GTM stuff. You've built these go-to-market playbooks across multiple continents. How do you tailor product-led growth across geographies, and how do you think about enterprise kind of go-to-market sales with account execs and SDRs versus PLG motions?
Yeah. I think the most important thing, as I referenced it earlier, is that the system compiles and works together. What do I mean by that? Is like, there's lots of different ways to construct go-to-market, just as there's lots of different ways to construct product and engineering. Right? Different microservices, different agents are using different. Like, you have to think as thoughtfully about the overarching picture and system that you're building first, right? So what does that mean? Well, you're not doing PLG and over-the-top like selling at the same time. Over time, maybe you migrate to that, but you got to think about your sales cycle. You got to think about your pricing and packaging. You got to think about upsell. Like, you got to think about all that stuff, or at least have a strong point of view about how those pieces fit together in a cohesive way before you actually march down the path. Right? In the early days, you're just trying to test a bunch of things. It's a Davy Crockett kind of like find my way through this forest type of mindset. But you have to be really clear. Okay, what problem are you solving and go to market? Right, just as you are with product market fit, you're trying to think about go to market fit. So I think about that to say, okay, what problem are we solving for whom, and how do we influence that person? What role does marketing play in that? Right? How do we get a message? In our case, we're talking about compound marketing, right? Who are we thinking about that for? We're talking about the boards and CEOs of these companies, or the C-level of companies that are trying to influence using marketing. So you have a high-level marketing message. You have a very clear point of view on how go-to-market fit is. What is the wave you're riding? Right? And how do you uniquely solve it? If you can't answer those questions, right, do not pass go, figure that out. And then you figure out your model. Your model needs to be simpatico with that. And model means it could be product-led growth. It could be top-led, like over the top, like sales, top-down led growth. And then you start to figure out the step-by-step, very tactically, to say, okay, great, what's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth step of this journey? And then you optimize the heck out of it, right? You basically use journey data to say, okay, great, where is the slowest gear in this machine? How do we either replace that gear or fix it? And then use that iteratively to solve the overall system. So I think that's kind of the theory of it. And the practical reality is, it's being rewritten as we speak, is how do you then ingest AI to basically make any of these parts more automated, right? I'm a big believer in using basically combining the context and basically automating some of the early steps of outreach. You can do that alongside humans to basically get answers to those questions about how the system can collectively fit together, and then solve the slowest gear at any one point in time in the engine by using some artificial intelligence in the hands of some smart folks.
The depth there. We can unpack that for another hour. Let's talk about your operator investor perspective. You have a unique perspective because you've been a GP, you've been an angel.
Yeah.
So what mental model do you bring to investing coming from the operator lens, and vice versa? Going back to an operating role after being an investor. Really fascinating me, because I can't imagine going back to an operator role now that I'm a GP. You've made that leap.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have a lot of respect for great investors, and I'm fortunate to know many of them. But I think it's about having a level of patience that I don't have as a human, at least at this phase of my life. So I admire investors who have long-term vision and patience to basically play the game, both fast and slow, if you will. To me, I think a lot of investors, unfortunately, don't really understand what causes value. And it really has to do with setting a clear vision, building a cohesive team to go chase that vision, making ruthless changes when needed, right? To basically ensure that team is cohesive and has the right people at all times, communicating the hell out of that vision, and then basically getting after it is just like in the war, in the trenches, is really how it's fought. And look, like it's hard to sit above the fray and pattern match in a world where the game's playing at like X speed right now, right? So I think there's a level of empathy and having points of view about where and how these things are going to unfold as an investor, but operator being on the ground level, like being in the war, like 8 feet off of the ground, is super valuable. So like I have found marrying the two of them can be really valuable. My initial foray into what I call my semester at sea as an investor was really trying to merge the best of what operating can bring, and even more specifically being like a growthy private equity player, as opposed to sort of like the power law chasing VC, right? I have a lot of respect for people who do that, but I think there's a lot of value that can be had by basically being slightly more hands-on, right? Slightly more truly building alongside with empathy, not sort of sitting back and diving in every once a quarter and offering like, oh, the button should be here or there. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but like, I wish I was
Basically, yeah.
exaggerating by a lot.
You
That
summed up
was
our value pretty well. No, I'm joking.
no, I'm not a commentary on you. But a lot of times there's like, oh yeah, everyone thinks they're a marketer, or everyone thinks they can operate like without the grounding in the actual reality of how hard it is to move these things. It's tricky. So again, I do think there's going to be a merging here where you basically do have to have some operational experience. It doesn't have to be resident in one person, but you need to acknowledge that as a valuable part of truly unlocking the value. It's not just hand wavy stuff floating above the fray. So again, I think that that's merging together in interesting ways. It will definitely be true in light of what we were describing before, right? Like companies are going to be more capital efficient, I believe, going forward. You know, I'm not talking about the models where you're pumping billions of dollars in. I think that's going to be a sort of an oligopolistic structure where, you know, there'll be a couple of them. But the real game is played not there. It's where how can you be more cost efficient and capital efficient building your companies, and then that game becomes okay. You truly have to add value. It's not just going to be like like you're just not going to need as much capital, so you have to figure out ways to add to it. I'm not sure how well formed that perspective is, but that's kind of how I see it right now. And with the advance of AI, it will only make that even more important from an investor perspective, and then vice versa. When there's more capital available for the operators themselves, then that the bar goes up in terms of the
I wonder if it, I've been thinking a lot about this, like how AI changes venture capital in the next 5 or 10 years, and maybe it ends up being like a Jevons paradox kind of thing where there's more startups than ever because it's just cheaper than ever to get going, right? And so there's just this huge paradoxical demand, especially for early stage capital. And then maybe that flows down to the growth stage as well. And paradoxically, you end up with a lot more growth stage capital as well. But that would be...
That's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I haven't really thought of it that way. I mean, definitely think of that inside the company. I was trying to articulate that before, right? There's going to be more things because there's going to be more automation, right? That 20% of time that humans have available will just be so much more levered, and it will allow the companies to do more things because you have these autonomous self-organizing agents with protocols swarming around. Like that's clearer in my mind in terms of companies than what you're describing, but I'll hold open the possibility that is true.
I wonder if I'll just be backing, I don't know, people's taste in the future, like, hey, I'd like to, create an experience for DJs or something. I don't know. I wonder because if AI can build everything, all we have left is like creating things for each other and telling each other stories.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot. Does B2B software kind of basically go away if AI can build it all,
Yeah. Well, there's something there. I know taste is a hard thing to describe by definition, but it's like, but the nuance that lives, like when you talk to my son who's into photography and drones and stuff, like he could go all the way down to like literally the most obscure level of detail about drone level photography. And then now he's doing a cappella. So he's like going all the way to like meeting the founder of like I just think there's something about going all the way down and marinating in the actual like nuanced workflows and details that craftspeople have had. We were talking about small towns, like craftspeople in like the olden days, like they had to build their own tools and like they had to think about all those details. So I'm not suggesting we'll be building their own tools, quite the opposite. There'll be attention to the details and the craftsmanship, the taste. We could have a long conversation about design. I think the chat bots, the chat interface today is the best we've got. So we're using it, but I think it's so limiting relative to where we're going to go here. Like it's going to be a mind expanding kind of Minority Report like interface across multi-modes that we can't articulate yet. And it will basically define a whole new set of experiences. We're early.
Yeah, we're in the Yahoo directory days of AI right now.
Totally. That's I think that's right. But the difference between what happens between Yahoo and Google and then the existing chat interfaces, it will be 100x difference in my mind. I just can't articulate it. I don't know what it is going to be, but I have every fiber of my being.
It's hard to forecast post singularity what everybody has AGI in their pocket, like what that world looks like. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with a rapid fire.
Let's go.
What's the biggest mistake founders make in a turnaround?
I don't know if it's a turnaround, but I think the biggest mistake companies make is forgetting what made them great in the first place. Right? The original problem and reason you set out to fight the good fight, battle all the probabilities and possibilities, usually is the answer. right? At Evernote, we lost track of the fact that like you remember everything, being a digital extension of your brain, right? And doing that incredibly well. That was the original thing that made it great. We got distracted on the way for good and bad reasons, but ultimately any company was formed for a reason. And if you're good, if you're successful, like that reason mattered and you did it uniquely in a way that resonated with your early customers, often that's where you need to go back to the basics.
What's an AI powered tool you're bullish on for the enterprise?
Well, aside from marketing, gosh, all the legal stuff drives me bananas. I think you could just go across all my contracts and see things and just proactively avoid hours of expensive conversations with lawyers. That would be amazing. Glean is successful for a reason. It literally is like the marriage of ChatGPT and Google inside your company. It can save you lots of time. Those are the sorts of things that I think are my the most powerful and exciting tools that I have.
What's the most underrated Canadian tech company right now?
Oh man, Canada has so much talent; it's unbelievable. I'm an investor and advised Daniel at Coho. Chime just went out last week. Last week, yeah. They're basically the Chime of Canada, doing exceptionally well. Them and Wealthsimple are creating the next generation of like financial institutions in Canada. That's exciting. Like Shopify is just, I don't think they're underrated, but they're amazing juggernaut. Mike Murchison at Ada has been in this sort of customer support, AI powered customer support business for a long time, like dating back over a decade. I wouldn't write them off. But man, it's really, I'd bet on the entire ecosystem, right? Especially with a new government who's basically going to, hopefully get the message that with this great talent and some capital can be unlimited potential. So I'm very bullish and long term on Canada.
It's the hardest decision you made at Google.
Maybe to leave Google, I don't know. It was pretty comfortable at Google. I guess any of the hard decisions for any leader are distinguished between the short and the long term and balancing those two, but ultimately talent differentiation. Google clearly had attracted incredible talent. So some of the harder decisions were made to say, hey, look, I'm here to build the best teams. Like, so it's a little bit like, I don't know if I'm a hockey fan. So like, the difference between playing the NHL and the AHL, the league one below is massive, right? So people that are really good in the AHL, they're not going to make it in the NHL. And I was building the NHL equivalent in what I did at Google. So I made difficult decisions there. But honestly, a lot of the decisions I made in a turnaround were about 20 times harder than any decision I made at Google, to be clear. Like, that was a really wonderful journey and experience. But, to go talk to founders and startup leaders in a turnaround, right? Those are the hard decisions.
What's a book you gift or recommend most often?
Fred Kaufman, Conscious Leadership is one. Good to Great's a good one.
I haven't read that since undergrad business school.
Yeah. We did a book club at our company. We did that one recently. I like that. I'd have to turn around and look at my book shelf, but yeah, those are ones that come to mind right now.
Yeah. Which portfolio company is currently blowing your mind?
Well, I've talked about Glean, but the one that is interesting is Emma Surajit's company. I had the good fortune of meeting Surajit at Google. He then went on to be CPO at Coinbase. They were early on in this, basically how you have a human, what we're now calling agents, come in and augment your workforce. They're doing exceptionally well. I went down the crypto and blockchain rabbit hole many, many years ago. So there's
what was it like down there in the hole?
Well, it was great. I'm just the type of person that learns by doing. I can read and so forth, but I didn't learn a certain amount that way. But I actually went to this guy, Ken Seif, who invested in his first fund, which did really well. And I said, give me 3 of your, things to advise. I did that and went down the rabbit hole. And that's how I had to meet the folks at Polkadot and really learned about just the protocol layers enough to be maybe on the other side of dangerous. There's a company called Spexy up in Vancouver that's doing imagery, kind of 3 centimeter. They're using micro drones to basically fly in spexagons and have like crazy resolution of the Earth, and then do all sorts of stuff from gaming to compliance with different municipal regulations and millions of other things we haven't even thought about. Really bullish on Bill and the team up there in Vancouver. They're doing some really exciting work.
What's the biggest governance mistake early stage startups make?
Oh, bringing on a board member who sucks or an investor who sucks. You're stuck with that person for a long time. So I encourage people to do back channel references, like at least,
especially if they're taking a board seat. If it's a big check 100%. And they're going to take it, if it's a small check, like whatever. But if it's a $5K check and a $1 million round, and they want a board seat,
correct,
you better do some reference checking.
Yeah, I've seen that go not so well.
Yes, I've been on cap tables where it wasn't going well. What keeps you up at night right now? And what keeps you up in the morning? And what gets you up in the morning?
Maybe the same, two sides of the same coin. Like I obviously have been lucky to have done lots of really interesting things at great brands with some amazing humans. I'm trying to be a good husband and dad to kids, and I'm trying to raise our children in an era of abundance and also an era of massive change. Trying to instill a right set of values in them. That's the stuff that I really worry about. And then the same thing. I want to be a good example for them. I want to show that, strong work ethic, figuring out how to adapt at all stages of your life is what really matters. So I'd say it'd zone in on, maybe it's just because we're recording this the day after Father's Day, and it's like I think about those things deeply, and I've been very fortunate to have a great partner in life, and also raising two kids that are having an interesting run in life, and I'm excited for their run. But I want to be a good example to them.
Well, this was a great conversation. Where can folks find you online?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I enjoyed the chat very much. I try to maintain a decent presence on social, but mostly on LinkedIn is where I tend to spend the most amount of time.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.